Hello, ladies and gents. So in this video, we're going to be looking at the macromolecule sort document. What we're going to do is look at some illustrations depicting macromolecules. Now, one way to conceptualize this is in some images, you're sort of zoomed in on just a portion of the macromolecule. In other instances, you're zoomed out and you're looking at a larger portion of the structure, or you're looking at maybe a more stylized image. So this really just takes practice, and we'll just go through how to pick things out and decide what's going on. Excuse me, I'm going to change the screen around just a little bit. All right, so in this first image, let's look at what we've got here. Let's look at this one. So one thing you'll notice is that it's rings of nitrogen. Rings of nitrogen typically represent nitrogenous bases. If you'll remember, you have purines and pyrimidines. Purines tend to be double ring structures. Adenine, guanine, stuff like that. So what we're doing is actually looking at the nitrogenous base here. So that goes in the nucleic acid category, because again, you're just looking at a portion of a nucleotide. You're just looking at the nitrogenous base. Now here in the next image, we zoom out just a little bit. This is also a nucleic acid, but if we look, here is your phosphate group. There's your sugar, the ring with the oxygens. And then here is the nitrogenous base. So both of these are nucleic acids. In the image on the left, you're looking at just the nitrogenous base. In the image on the right, we back out a little bit and you look at just a nucleotide. Now, this next image is sort of tricky. The giveaway for this, if you can see, is that it lists R's. These R's are the R groups of a polypeptide. And then here with the double bond oxygen, that's indicating carboxyl group. Then you have amino groups. So this is sort of showing you sort of a stylized image of a polypeptide. This image, it's rings of CHO with a lot of O. So this is a polysaccharide. This goes in the carb category. So we're looking at a carb that's a chain of glucose monomers linked together. Speaking of chains, let's look at this sort of red chain that we see here. It has things like glycine, isoleucine, valine, cysteine, glutamic acid. Those are all individual amino acids. And if we look on the end, here's an amino group. On the other end is a carboxyl group. And then the giveaway is sort of hidden in the interior of the molecule. There is a disulfide bridge. It's two sulfurs covalently bonded to one another. So what we're looking at is in the protein category. And specifically, this is looking at a polypeptide that's going to start to fold up here. So this image that we just looked at is a polypeptide. That's a chain of amino acids. Now let's look in the next image. This is looking at an individual amino acid. So it's still in the protein category, but it's looking at just one amino acid. So that'd be like looking at just one of these circles. We see the amino group. We see the carboxyl group. Here's the alpha carbon. It's hydrogen buddy. And then this is the R group. So again, that is focusing on just one amino acid rather than a chain of amino acids. Let's see. These next two images, we see rings with nitrogen. Again, this is sort of zoomed in and just looking at nitrogenous bases. So here's a double ring structure, so that's a purine. Here's a single ring, so that's a pyrimidine like your C and T. But again, this is just looking at one part of a nucleotide, just at the nitrogenous base. All right, let's look on further down the page here. Okay. Next, this again is looking at a single amino acid. So this goes in the protein category. And this is nice because it's sort of color code things here. There's your amino group. There's your carboxyl group. There's your alpha carbon in the middle. It's hydrogen buddy. And then here is the R group that imparts the chemical characteristics. In red, what do we got here? It looks like it's CHO with a lot of O. It's in a ring. You see that kind of stuff, that's telling you that it's a carb. All right. Let's see. In this image, okay, we see a phosphorus, so that's a giveaway. Here's nitrogen. It's CHOMP, so we know it's a nucleic acid. This is looking at a single nucleotide in a nucleic acid. Here's your phosphate group, your sugar, and your nitrogenous base. A chain of rings with some oxygen. That's a pretty stylized image of some, excuse me, getting low battery warning. This is a stylized image of a carb. This image here, again, this is a single amino acid. Excuse me, I'm going to grab the charger while I can. That's a single amino acid. Your amino group, carboxyl group, alpha carbon, hydrogen buddy. Now, in this instance, the R group is just a single hydrogen. So that's what makes that one a little different. All right, now, the image that's shaded sort of beige like this is a tricky one, okay? In this image, look at what it's made of. It's CHO, but it's got a fair amount of O. It's got equal concentrations or equal amounts of carbon and oxygen. So this is actually a carb, but rather than being in a ring, they have it in a straight chain. Okay, so again, don't be fooled by that. That is actually a carb. The next image that we look at here, again, this is pretty stylized, but it's trying to indicate a carbohydrate. You get the rings. All right. This image, it's pretty short, but what we're looking at is a lipid. Specifically, that's a triglyceride. You've got a glycerol, and then the 3 fatty acid tails. Now, again, the tails are pretty short in this instance, but that's the shape of a triglyceride, an energy storage molecule. All right. Let's move on down to the next page. Sorry, I need to find the charger for a second here, get that plugged in. All right. Now, this image, this one is pretty good. I like this. If we look at this image here, you'll notice the zigzags. So that's hydrocarbon tails. But if you look closely, this is a phosphate group. There's a phosphorus and then the oxygen surrounding it. What this is a phospholipid. Okay, so you got a polar head and the 2 nonpolar tails. So this goes in the lipid category. This image, there's a similar one in your book. The giveaway here is the R's. They mentioned that for the R groups. And so we're looking at a polypeptide, specifically the pleated sheets that form with the secondary structure. Again, you can have the oxygens and nitrogens, since they're pretty electronegative. They can form hydrogen bonds with the other sort of skeletal parts of a polypeptide. And so you get the pleated sheet. Okay, this image, if we look at it, you've got the rings. It's CHO. There's a lot of O. We're looking at a carb. That's a monosaccharide. Okay, if we... move. Okay, what do we got here? In this image, this is probably a little bit more straightforward. We see it's made of CHO. There's not much O, and it's on the interior of the molecule here. It's really 3 long chains of hydrocarbons. This is a triglyceride, another energy storage molecule. The tails are straight, so it looks like it's probably a saturated fat. And so with the straight tails, they can sort of pack in tightly and form solids at room temperatures like butter and lard. In this image, okay, it's made of CHON. We've got an amino group, a carboxyl group. There's your alpha carbon, it's hydrogen buddy. And then in blue, that is the R group. Okay. Now, this image is a little tricky. If we look at it, it's CHO. It's in rings, but there's hardly any oxygen. Okay. If you see 4 fused rings like that, 4 fused hydrocarbon rings, that's indicating it's a lipid, specifically cholesterol. Cholesterol, we'll talk about its uses when we get into cells in the next unit, but that's a cholesterol. It's the same, basically a very similar image in the bottom left here, or to the left of below and to the left of the previous image. Oh boy, it's Friday. So again, it's a hydrocarbon, 4 fused rings. You're dealing with the cholesterol. Here, this is a pretty stylized image, but I'm sorry. Again, lipid. This is a set of phospholipids. This is a portion of a cell membrane. You have the polar heads on the outside and the nonpolar tails on the inside. All right, so I think that walks us through that worksheet. One worksheet to go, and then you're all set.